So last night, we got a very wonderful 20-minute state of play detailing a ton of things about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But the absolute best part was at the end when we got confirmation of the demo dropping, and I downloaded it immediately. The first thing that completely blew me away was the visuals for this game. Now, with Final Fantasy VII Remake, particularly on the PS4, there was a lot of areas in the game where you could spot quite a few low resolution textures. The environments weren't necessarily the best, they were very much flat boxes, and don't get me started on some of the NPCs around town, which again, issues with texture resolution, some of their lip syncing was a little bit weird on these minor NPCs. Not to mention that the NPCs might look a little bit more PS3 era-ish, some of them look straight out of like Lightning Returns. They were a bit rough around the edges. Now when Integrate came out, they fixed a lot of that and the game looked significantly better. Now there were still remnants of some stuff with the PS4 version, but for the most part it looks tremendously better with the Integrate version. However, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth feels like a true next generation upgrade. The NPCs look phenomenal. Going around Nibelheim, looking at all of the detail that they put into the environments. The environmental textures all loading in and looking crisp, and this game just all around looking significantly better than what Remake did. There's even been upgrades to the character models. In particular, their hair looks really good. And also the way the hair animates is phenomenal too. The way Sephiroth's long hair animates. You know, if you grew up in the PS2 era, they preferred characters with shorter hair back then, because when you have shorter hair, you don't have to deal with the type of animation that you do with longer hair that requires a lot more bones. That's difficult to realistically animate as it flows and as the character moves their body. And so a lot of the times the hair would end up looking stiff. Here, all that animates some of the best I've ever seen in video games. It's not an understatement. There is also, of course, the graphics mode that prioritizes 4K and the performance mode that prioritizes 60 frames per second. Now, of course, you know me, I chose performance mode. I prefer 60 frames per second. I think that once you get past 1080p, if I have to choose another option, I'd rather have 60 frames than just have more pixels on the screen, especially in an action game like this. Now, some people have said that the game is a little bit blurry when you're playing on the performance mode. It wasn't enough to bother me, but it was something that I did notice. However, I'm going to be honest, it's still not bad enough for me to switch back to graphics mode for 4K. And from what I can tell, it seems like a much better performance mode than what was offered to us in Final Fantasy XVI, where you only truly got locked 60 FPS in battles, and at that point, it also came at the price of the resolution. You know, here the performance is just solid. It's completely solid. I did not notice a single frame rate dip. So again, if you're sensitive to it being maybe a little bit lower resolution here or there, then the 60 frames per second mode may not be for you. However, it is a consistent 60 frames per second. And I don't believe the resolution dipped too far below 1080p when I was playing, but that is something that Digital Foundry will have to weigh in on. But just know that someone who thinks that Final Fantasy VII Remake compared to some contemporary AAA games back on the PS4 wasn't necessarily the strongest title visually. I feel wholly the opposite about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I feel like this is a true next generation game, something that is built for PS5 and stands among the best looking video game titles that are out right now. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. Now, as you can see in the gameplay that I have playing on screen, I'm a bit rough at playing because it has been a minute since I played Final Fantasy VII Remake. However, I was able to really get comfortable, and it did take me a second to figure out some of the new mechanics, but once I got into the swing of things, I was really enjoying it. There are numerous improvements here over Remake. It's one of those situations where a ton of small quality of life additions adds up to make a fundamentally better and new refreshed combat system. First of all, just controlling Cloud is amazing. Aerial combat feels a lot better. You can block in the air, and while you don't have a dedicated jump button, there's a lot more air tech that you can do, making this a much better experience than what Remake was. So while there isn't a dedicated jump button, there's a new context jump button. So whenever you get to certain ledges or whenever you get to different areas, you can jump off by pressing the circle button, and you're pretty much able to hop over most obstacles that you'd normally be able to walk around as well. So it's interesting suggesting that even though there is no jump button, any time that jumping would be necessary in the game or would be a thing that you'd want to do, the game will allow you to jump. And shout out to my boy Blitz for explaining this, but there's also ways to essentially launch yourself into the air even for a grounded enemy. So you can actually start doing air tech essentially, and generally speaking, controlling Cloud feels so much better. The best way to describe it for all of you PS2 kids again is that experience of going from the combat in Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2. And then we have playing as Sephiroth. Now, initially, I was a bit nervous about the idea of playing as Sephiroth. One of the reasons that I was nervous about it was because Sephiroth's power is alluded to as being impossibly strong. In the original game, you can kind of check his stats and equipment, but you can't really play as him. You can't issue him commands. The implication to me was that the depth of Sephiroth's strength was always left a mystery. So I wondered if actually playing as him would kind of ruin that mystery. But I think when you consider the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake and what it is, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Particularly when we fight Sephiroth at the end of Remake, the mystery of Sephiroth and his power is kind of already not there anymore. The guy threw a building at us. We already know that Sephiroth can do that stuff. And so while it wouldn't have made sense for the context of the original story, for the context of the story that they're telling in Remake, it does make sense for us to play as Sephiroth. And boy, is he the most fun character to play as in Remake continuity. Like, if I could choose any character to play as, it would be him. And the moment the PC version comes out, you can believe people are going to mod the game so that you can play as Sephiroth the entire time. And it will be the first mod I download the moment that it happens. Sephiroth melts every enemy in front of him. He is extremely powerful, and the moment that you start playing as him, the game almost becomes too easy, as it should be. The one thing I will say about Sephiroth is that he is actually so well built as a character that it seems almost insane that they built Sephiroth just for this one scene. And for him to not be playable again, I'm not suggesting anything, I'm just saying he's just so well built. I'm surprised they're only using him for that one section, allegedly. But also, I'm kind of hoping that we get to play as him again because, genuinely speaking, he is super fun. You know, when he's not going completely crazy, and that he does in this demo. Now, Final Fantasy VII Remake was a very cinematic game, but the cinematography in Rebirth is entirely next level. I'm talking about there are many points in this demo that are just absolutely film-like, particularly surrounding the moments where Sephiroth starts to go mad. It almost has a horror film-like essence to it. And I really like that, and I think that that is a really great angle to use when depicting Sephiroth going mad. I also think when it comes to the voice acting in this demo, the actors have gotten really accustomed to their characters. Hearing Cody delivering a lot of Zack Cloud's lines were incredible. It was almost eerie, actually, because it's like the whole time you know that this is supposed to be Zack. You're hearing Cody deliver these lines, and you're seeing the facial expressions, and the way the facial expressions are done here is also really interesting because you can really see those facial expressions being more like Zack's expressions. And you can also see the guy who is supposed to be Cloud that whole time, and you can hear his voice, and so it's basically Cody doing both of these lines at the same time, and the way he's making actual Cloud sound so sheepish. Dude, it is really phenomenal, incredibly well acted. Sephiroth's lines, wow, okay, I know some people preferred the original actor for Sephiroth that we've seen in things like Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts 2, but the way Tyler delivers Sephiroth's lines here is really good. There is a noticeable voice change between Sephiroth after he finds out the truth and before, and that shift in Sephiroth's tone is really disturbing in the best way possible. You feel like Sephiroth is a different man after discovering that, and that is a really important detail that helps sell the story. Now, as incredible as this demo was, it's still not over yet, as we've been told that at an unspecified date, they're going to be updating the demo again, and we're going to get to explore some of the Junon region. This is going to let us get a feel for the game's open world segments and get some true exploration. This is also a great marketing idea, Square. elsewhere, because it's sending people back to the demo, and it's giving the demo more longevity. It also gives us something to hold us over to the game's release just a little bit longer. Now, of course, I have been critical of Final Fantasy VII Remake's new story direction, the multiverse, the Arbiters of Fate, the remake sequel stuff. I wasn't tremendously into Part 1's interpretation of those things. However, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is such a high quality game, and it delivers its narrative thus far with such incredible confidence that I am entirely open to giving it a chance, and I want to be wrong about this brand new story, because the gameplay and everything that they've shown off, every moment that I've seen so far, has been exactly where I've been wanting Final Fantasy to go. This game brings back exploration, mini games, fun moments and serious ones, and it brings it all together in one incredible package. The combat is the best Final Fantasy has ever had, hands down. His Remake's combat was already phenomenal, but this just elevates it to a brand new level. So I can confidently say, after playing the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo, it's really made me a believer in the project again. I could not be more excited for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I was saying before that my hype level 1 through 10, it was probably at an 8 before the demo, and I was saying that the demo is probably the only thing that can actually take my hype to a 10 out of 10, and sure enough, here I am sitting at an 11 out of 10 for FF7 Rebirth. So while we don't know where this unknown journey is heading, it truly is no getting off of this train. And if you played the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo, please let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And I'll see you all in the next video.